can honor everyone's time. My strategy for this demo is to go through a couple of Hyperdoc examples, and these are all going to be from social studies, either world history or government, and then try to save a decent amount of time at the end for questions. If there was anything that wasn't clear or anything you need further explanation, I'll be happy to do my best to answer that for you guys. So just before we get started, if you haven't opened up this document from Adam's email, this is just a quick one-pager of tips and suggestions why Hyperdocs are useful, and then some examples and resources for when you're ready to create your own Hyperdocs. For example, this, I believe it's this link right here. No, this link. If you Google Hyperdocs, there is a website that is sort of the genesis of the Hyperdoc movement, if you will, and it has a lot of free templates that are in Google Docs forms that you can use for lots of different subjects. So I want to get started by showing you a world history Hyperdoc that I created along with Heather Kanicki probably 2 years ago at this point. And a lot of people on our team use it from year to year. The first thing that you should know about a Hyperdoc, or what it is, I guess, is literally a document filled with hyperlinks. This is a way to sort of guide students and streamline the process of accessing different sources of information and materials without them having to go hunting themselves or have a zillion tabs open and trying to figure out what goes with which question you're asking them. So this particular Hyperdoc is on the battles of World War I, and it starts with a link to a Quizlet set. So if we click on this link and I share this tab, hopefully you guys can see this Quizlet set, that just gives the students the 4 terms we want them to define. And then we move down to different technologies that are in our curriculum that were new technology during World War I. So submarines, poison gas, machine guns, etc. These links go to things like YouTube videos, an image collection that is in a separate set of Google Slides. So instead of assigning a copy of that set of Google Slides to every student or posting it some convoluted place in Google Classroom, we've hyperlinked it in the Hyperdoc to go specifically along with this assignment so that the students can answer the questions and summarize their learning. Let's see, this is something called Doc Hub, which is basically like an infographic about machine guns that gives students a sort of a different kind of visual for information. So you can see that we've used a couple of different kinds of sources in this Hyperdoc, and you can link to whatever kind of source you want, as long as it's accessible through the student's school account. And I forgot to mention previously, but the way I would share this with students is simply by creating an assignment in Google Classroom and assigning a copy to each student. This way, it's one document with all the resources. The student does all of the work completely in the document. I get it when they turn it in. It's very quick and easy to review and grade and go over with them later on. Other types of sources we've linked to are images. So these are some propaganda posters from Wikimedia Commons, which is an offshoot of Wikipedia related strictly to images and maps and things like that. And then again, we have links to some additional Google Slides, as well as, I think these are linked to Newsella articles, and asking them to basically give a summary of the date, location, and significance of the major battles of World War I. At the very bottom of the document, this is a feature that actually doesn't really work anymore because of FCPS's restrictions on some of Google features. So that's something to really consider when you start making your Hyperdoc, to make sure that all of the resources you want to share with students are available through FCPS. But when we originally made this, students still had access to My Maps through the Google for Education suite. And so the purpose of this part of the assignment was actually for them to create a Google map of the 5 major battles of World War I, and then they shared the link to their map with us in this box. So that's another option you can do as well. So lots of my Hyperdocs have places like different colored boxes or clear charts that ask students to put the information that I'm asking them for in a specific place. But if you're asking them to use a tool like Adobe Spark, or something like creating their own Quizlet set or creating their own Kahoot as sort of like a summary piece of one of the activities, you can include directions in your Hyperdoc that ask them to do whatever the thing is that you want them to do, and then include a hyperlink in a specific space, so that you can easily, as the teacher, click on that link and see their work, as opposed to trying to share things through Kahoot or just searching things in a classroom somewhere, in a digital classroom somewhere. This makes it a little bit more accessible for you once everything is done. Another example of a Hyperdoc is using it for a current event. So this is a Hyperdoc that we used in government this year to help students learn about the process of an impeachment inquiry. So again, connected to videos, resources, also sometimes connecting to audio links can be really helpful. Just to use another government example right now, I was actually listening to oral arguments in the Supreme Court earlier this morning. That could be a kind of audio tool, or there's other ways that you can listen to audio that could be a good tool for Hyperdocs. One thing I will say about Hyperdocs, and I'll go back to this page for now, is that using them to link to a variety of learning tools is a lot better than using them to link to learning activities. And what I mean by that is, take your kids in a link in a Hyperdoc to something like the official website for the Supreme Court, or an article on Newsella, or a database in the library databases that you want them to search, as opposed to, here is a link to another Google Doc that I want you to make a copy of and fill out and then give back to me. That is certainly a way to use Hyperdocs, but that becomes very overwhelming and complicated. So a couple of my biggest tips would be to include the space for them to write their answers in the document itself. link to the source that you want them to review, the material that you want them to look at. But when it comes to whatever the actual work you want them to do, it should be in the actual Hyperdoc. This is the last example I'm going to go through with you, which is a review page for World History 2. We make review in World History 1, World History 2, and Government. We create review pages like this one, Review Hyperdocs, for every single topic that we assess on. And this serves a couple of really important functions. It's our remediation requirement for retakes, which is definitely a good way to use Hyperdocs. Personally, I also use them for review prior to the assessment, because often when a student needs to do a retake, it's because they never did the review document in the first place. And we link to some pretty basic stuff, like a topic page or essential knowledge page on the topic, which is, these are social studies documents that were made by the county during summer curriculum development. Quizlet sets for vocabulary. This is a link to a YouTube video on a crash course thought bubble about African empires. We also add Google Drawings into these. So when a student has their own copy of this document, they can open up this Google Drawing and edit the answers themselves before they submit it. Again, that's a little bit more streamlined than giving students a link to a Google Drawing and then asking them to do the drawing and then link to the copy that they made or some sort of process like that. Trying to think if there's anything else really pertinent. So let me actually pull up a remediation document that I can edit so I can show you that process. Let's see. Just bear with me for a second here. Okay, so this is one of the review documents for Asian empires, which is another topic from World History 2. So this right here is an example of a Google Drawing. So if I were a student, I would click on the drawing and you get the little edit feature down here at the bottom. And it gives them the quick instructions. Each letter on the map represents one of the world empires in 1500. Label each letter with the correct empire. So in this little answer box down here, they would type their answers. Simple as that. And then they would save it and you can see their answers down here. So when you're looking at the Hyperdoc, you don't even have to open up this Google Drawing to see their answers. You can see them. I mean, they're a little bit small, but if you zoom in your document, if you need to, you can see their responses. Let me see what else is in this Hyperdoc actually. This is another one with a map that asks them to drag their answers to the locations. And again, answers that they need to type in are in these boxes. A really good way to help make things clear to students is when you're putting your answer boxes on your Hyperdoc, either you can outline them in a different color or, you know, fill them with a different color so that there's like a very visual indication to students that here's a question that requires a response. This is where I want you to put your response. It also helps you as the teacher to see where their answers are when you're looking at these documents after they've submitted. One thing I will say, and this is going to be true for any way that you are using library databases during this time, not just in a Hyperdoc, but if you use them in a choice board or even just any kind of assignment as we're distance learning, it's a really good idea in whatever document that you're giving students that you give them instructions on how to log into the library databases while they're at home. If we were at school and this Hyperdoc was linked to a library database, it would take them there automatically because their computers would be on the FCPS network. But since they're at home and they're not connected through VPN, they're going to have to put in a username and password for any of the library databases that they access. So if you go to the library databases site on our school libraries page, there's a link to a Google document that gives all the passwords for that. So in a Hyperdoc like this, what I would do, no matter what, whether I was intending them to do it in the classroom or at home, if I had a link to a library database, I would also link to that passwords document in the directions, because lots of times kids don't finish things in class and they end up finishing things at home. And then it's the whole, I couldn't finish it because I couldn't get into any of the databases. So that's a really like quick and easy way to avoid that situation just for any assignment that you're giving kids. They don't make a copy when they're, so if you're assigning the Hyperdoc in Google Classroom, you should post it as an assignment and then click the option that says make a copy for each student. So that, and I'll try to show you that really quickly, so that it automatically generates their own copy. And it keeps this title, Hyperdoc Review, Asian Empires, and then adds their name at the beginning. That's how I know whose it is. And I don't have to have them type it anywhere in the document. So if I go in here and I am in a Google Classroom and I create a new assignment, I'm going to add my Hyperdoc to this assignment, Hyperdoc Review, Asian Empires. Down here, whenever you add an assignment, you get a drop-down menu. The students can view the file, they can edit the file, or you make a copy for each student. You always want to choose make a copy for each student when it's an assignment that you want them to do something in. Don't click students can edit file, or else they're going to jack up all of your documents that you're sharing with them. So when you do this and then, you know, click assign, it automatically generates a copy for each student in your class and takes the work out of it for you. If you hyperlinked Google Doc to that, would it also make a copy for each student of the Google Doc that is? I don't think I understand your question, Angie. If I hyperlink, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe easier to explain this. So, you know, I had like assignments that like required sort of typing. So instead of hyperlinking it to the Google Hyperdoc, I have been posting separate file like Google Doc and then sharing that. But if I sort of like embedded that in the Hyperdoc, do you think that would make a copy for each student, or they would still have to make the copies on their own?
Okay, I understand your question now. So if I go to, let me find the World War I again. If I go to the World War I Hyperdoc and like this is a set of slides. Let's say I wanted students to type in this set of slides or edit it in some way. When I post it to Google Classroom and have the make a copy for each student, it doesn't make copies of these kinds of links. You would either have to include that as another document in your assignment on Google Classroom, or what my recommendation would be is to have it, if it's something that you want the kids to edit like as a group, you could share that doc here and then turn on edit access so that anyone who has the link can edit the document. Then when you gave it to them in a link, in a Hyperdoc, all the students in the class would be able to edit that same document, if that's your goal. If your goal is to just, have students practicing typing individually, then I would actually create a box in the Hyperdoc where they're supposed to type.
That's extra page on it at the end or something like that. I didn't even think about this. You could put extra page on it and have it in there rather than creating, because I've been posting the link, like I've been doing something similar to that, but then I would post the link to Google Docs separately in the classroom, but then they have to go open another link. So maybe creating that as a third page may be a better idea. Kind of like you have the boxes, but besides that, it's not, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this document. Like I said, this document has a lot of suggestions and examples and templates for you to use. You can easily take one of these examples here and make a copy and make it usable for your content. I will point out some of these specific tips. Don't overwhelm students with too many resources. Breaking up your Hyperdoc into sections where they access one source for a set of a few questions and then go to another source. Don't link to a different resource for like every question you want them to do. Use a variety of resources, videos, Newsella articles, websites, audio things. All of those are great. Use an organizational system for your Hyperdoc that works for you and stick with it. Don't, wonky fonts, different boxes, different shapes all over the place is going to confuse kids. And think about why you're using this Hyperdoc, like what is your goal before you even start making it. Because I would say for Hyperdocs especially, if there isn't some kind of inquiry or investigation component to your goal, then it may not exactly be the right tool for whatever you're trying to do with your kids. Because even though you're providing the sources and the materials for your students in a Hyperdoc, there is a component where you're asking a kid to explore a resource. So there is that sort of like investigative kind of skill to using Hyperdocs. And the last thing I'll say is one of the big things that I think are awesome about Hyperdocs is that you can use them to develop skills as opposed to just focusing on ingesting content. And you can develop those skills while they're learning content, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and stop presenting for now, unless there's questions about that. Can you show how you made the map with the dragging labels? Okay, sure. So let me go back to presenting that one. I think that's this one. Okay. So this is a Google drawing. So if I were creating this Hyperdoc from scratch and I wanted to add a Google Drawing, I would go to Insert Google Drawing. And if you want the students to be able to edit it, you have to click New. Otherwise, it's going to insert a Google Drawing that maybe is in your files somewhere else, and it's just going to add it to the document as a picture. It's not going to let kids edit it. So to add a Google Drawing, that's how you do it, by clicking Insert Drawing and then New. And then once you've got your drawing, you can make it do whatever you want in theory. I mean, it can be whatever you want it to be. So I basically just Googled a map of like a black and white outline map of Asia. And then I changed the background so it was this red color. I added this text box for directions. And then all of these answers are just little text boxes. So the students just have to drag each box to wherever you want them to put your information. And when they click Save and Close, their answers are there. And you can see where they've put things. Hopefully that is helpful. And you can do that with anything. The draggable thing can be with maps. You can do it with matching. Like I've done it where I've listed like all the names of the Greek gods and then have asked students to drag the characteristic of each one of those gods. Or if you're doing a Venn diagram or some kind of other chart where you're trying to categorize things, that's a really easy way to do dragging. You can also use pictures instead of text. You just got to make sure that you make the pictures small enough so that it doesn't crowd the drawing and big enough so that they can see what they are. What else? You may also be able to do something like, no, I don't think you can. It's going to say you can't, like, there's no like coloring tool in here to where you could be like, color the Indian subcontinent orange or whatever. I guess you could have them create a shape that was a specific color. So put an orange circle on China. You could give them directions to do that. I will say for the most part, with the exception of maybe some very low level ESOL or SPED students that might need either very, very explicit instructions or guidance on how to do this kind of manipulation. Kids are savvy about this. Don't let them make you think that they don't know how to make a circle in a Google drawing. They do. They know how to use most of these features. And if they don't, explaining it once usually takes care of it. So there's a lot of avenues that you can use to do like manipulation type things in there. There are examples in the, let me go to this tab. There's examples linked down here for the Hyperdocs. So like this is the current events assignment I showed you. This is one that I actually just did with students as a distance learning assignment for the Russian Revolution. These are the review pages for, this is one for government and this is one for world history. So you can definitely make your own copies of any of these documents and mess around with it and see like how you could use it for your classes. Thank you, Adam. So I'll stay in here for a little bit longer if anybody has any questions. If a question arises that you think of while you're messing around with these documents or looking at them, then there is a questionnaire form, which if I can find it right quick, I will link to it. Okay. Let's see here. So this is the Google form that if you have any questions, after Heather does her demo on choice boards tomorrow, her and I and Adam will review some of those questions and see if there's anything that we can sort of send out en masse. Like if we see common questions come up, we'll try to email, send out stuff about that to everyone. And then if there's like a really specific question, then one of us will try to get back to you via email as soon as we can to help you out. Okay. Oops, no problem. Have a good day, guys. Good luck with your classes tomorrow.
Bethany,
Yes.
where will the recording to the session go?
That is a good question that we would have to ask Adam because he's the one who will have that file. I think he'll probably share it out, or we can post it in that tips and suggestions document. What do you think, Adam?
I think it'll probably go both. Likely it will. It'll just be a video file that will. I'll likely just put as an unlisted link on YouTube just to make it easier for everyone to access.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.